Listen, guys, we're not doing things your way tonight. We're doing things my way. This is not your house. This is mine.
The WWE, oh, it's about to change.
8,000 WWE fans sold out.
Professional wrestling is a huge multi-billion-dollar international market. Audiences have been wowed by the feats of these athletes that dedicate their lives to this high-octane soap opera for decades. When we think of pro wrestling, one company in particular comes to mind. Watched and beloved by millions of fans across the globe, with licensed video games and high-grossing pay-per-view events throughout the year, birthing global superstars that go on to amazing things. World Wrestling Entertainment, or more commonly called WWE. It's been the premier pro wrestling organization over the last part of the 20th century and to date in the 21st. While there are other popular loved organizations like the AEW and Impact Wrestling, WWE is still seen as the pinnacle of the sport. But WWE has plenty of secrets, some darker than others, and today we'll explore how this giant of professional action sports creates its drama, and whether they've had their athletes' best interest at heart over the art of making money. This is WWE Beneath the Surface.
The loser of this match tonight leaves WWE.
Started in 1952 by Jess McMahon and Toots Mondt, and then called Capital Wrestling Corporation, things have only gotten bigger and better over the years. They rebranded to the Worldwide Wrestling Federation in 1963 and began to grow into a national name in the United States. It was when Vince McMahon Jr. took over the family business in 1980 that things really took off at a fast pace. He immediately secured the rights to change the business to simply be called WWF. Over the course of the 80s, wrestling would enter a golden age as improvements to television broadcasting made it possible to show the vibrant, colorful world of wrestling to a global audience. Today, the WWE exports to over 150 global markets, and the groundwork of the 80s with stars like Hulk Hogan becoming the national and international celebrities is what makes that possible. In the late 80s and early 90s, the then WWF was hit with scandals and it changed the direction of wrestling once more. A number of athletes claimed that they were pressured into taking performance-enhancing drugs by the leadership. Although McMahon was eventually acquitted, it is common knowledge and was confirmed by stars like Hulk Hogan that the use of steroids amongst professional wrestlers was extremely common during this time. In order to get away from this bad press, McMahon decided it was time to refresh the roster, bringing in names like Bret Hitman Hart, Shawn Michaels, and The Undertaker as the new young stars of the sport with a harder-hitting show, featuring more controversial storylines. By 1997, rival organization WCW had broken onto the scene and stolen talent from the WWF roster, including longtime superstar Hulk Hogan. McMahon was forced to tweak things yet again.
The business was prospering much more so when WCW was going head-to-head with WWE.
That's when another golden era for the WWF happened. The Attitude Era is where a whole new generation of fans fell in love with the sport. Names like Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, along with Triple H, and a whole host of new exciting talent was brought through to replace the exodus to WCW. McMahon renamed the organization WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment, in 2002 after losing a suit against the World Wildlife Fund over the use of WWF. This is seen as the end of the Attitude Era and the start of wrestling as we know it today. With 1 billion households around the planet tuning in each week, it's needless to say that WWE is the true peak of sports entertainment and looks set to continue being so in the future. Despite the success of the business, it hasn't always been the best written show out there.
These guys could come in to WCW and just literally carve whatever they wanted out.
The writing on WWE's regular promotion shows, namely Raw and SmackDown, isn't always the most sophisticated. In fact, sometimes the writers seem to just take a wrestler's bio and have them repeatedly remind everyone of their achievements to fill out the screen time. The Miz has, over the years, been quick to remind the audience and his fellow talent how many times he's won the Intercontinental title. Sure, it's great to have a diverse amount of champions, but when everyone's winning a belt, it's just lazy storytelling to have them remind everyone of their successes week after week to create intrigue. The writers are also guilty of often telling stories that aren't stories at all. The formula is often just the creation of a premise, which is repeated until the conclusion of the so-called story, like the writing surrounding Logan Paul's appearance in the ring, and his beef with Seth Rollins, for example. There was no intrigue. Just Seth saying he didn't like Paul as an outsider, and there wasn't any more story to it, just that premise and the match, and that's it. Sure, this isn't always the case, and some of it might be to appeal to the widest possible audience, including those that aren't looking for complex plot lines, but the storytelling is next to non-existent at times. The writers have even admitted that they don't like the content too.
The only man who sells empty boxes is The Undertaker.
In his legendary Talk is Jericho podcast appearance, Jon Moxley ripped apart the WWE creative process. When he texted a writer, "I f***ing hate that," the writer simply replied with, "I know." Really, meaning, yes, it sucks, but look who I'm working for. The truth is, a lot of the writing is done to appease McMahon,
Guy was trying to cast a spell on me, you know, like a wizard or something.
who favors these more basic, low-level storylines to something more complex. That said, he has, over the years, been quite keen on controversial storylines. Take allowing Hornswoggle, a wrestler brought in as a sidekick to Fit Finlay, who has a form of dwarfism, to become the cruiserweight champion right before it was retired. Not only unrealistic, but also, to some, making a circus show from someone with dwarfism. Then there was Backlash in 2006, a pay-per-view where Vince and Shane McMahon were due to square off in a match against Shawn Michaels. And God?
Let's try, he's the holy roller.
Oh boy.
He's the hipster from heaven. He's the man upstairs from the kingdom of heaven. Please welcome God.
Instead of simply allowing it to happen as scripted, Vince declared him as more powerful than God, even making an attempt to prove his point at a church service, which seemed to take things one step too far for a lot of fans. It's not just lazy writing and controversial storylines though. There's a darker underlying secret in professional wrestling that nobody, not least the WWE, is talking about. Much darker than the stories being told on screen.
If you want to overtake McMahon and kick his ass, well then I need some players.
Pro wrestling, down to each move, is scripted. What people don't often appreciate is that despite being predetermined, it is still an extremely physical, demanding sport. These athletes are part professional sports star, part choreographer, dance professional, and part actor, all rolled into one. Unlike other sports stars, they don't get an off-season. Wrestling is a year-round deal, and you're often on the road away from friends and family, picking up and dealing with minor injuries all the time. It can be a lonely career for many wrestlers, which often leads to dark places. Addiction to painkillers, recreational drugs, and alcohol can be quite common. Over the years, there have been several high-profile tragedies surrounding WWE stars. The most shocking was in 2005. Eddie Guerrero was set to fight in a three-way bout for the World Championship against Randy Orton and Batista. Sadly, Eddie never made it to the ring, and he passed away in his hotel room. He had struggled with addiction in the past, and this took its toll on his heart, causing him to have a cardiac arrest and die. Some people questioned whether WWE was taking enough care of its stars, suggesting that this could have been picked up on by medical staff if they were more stringent. Others just felt it was a tragedy. But the darkest ever chapter for WWE was surely the Chris Benoit incident. In June 2007, Benoit suffered from a suspected psychotic break and murdered his wife and 7-year-old son before taking his own life. This shocked the wrestling world. Chris had been a fan favorite. Upon investigation, it was found that the break was a result of head trauma from his signature diving headbutt, use of prescription medicine, and a buildup of testosterone in his system due to a synthetic hormone he'd been taking. It was this that led to the WWE to begin improving its safeguarding and wellness policies, but many would argue that they could still do more, with the only meaningful actions being suspending talent where links to drugs are found. Hulk Hogan famously admitted in the 80s that taking steroids was common with wrestlers. It's hard to imagine that has changed in 30 years.
I was tired, I had a bad attitude, I was hurt, I was beat up, and Vince McMahon knew that.
Keeping up the muscular physique with the demands of training and managing injuries must make it hard to avoid painkillers and steroids. And as the years went by, it's clear that WWE wasn't doing anything to make sure its athletes were kept on the right path. So, there you have it. The biggest name in sports entertainment doesn't always put the effort in where you might think it's needed the most. Whether that's cutting corners with its plot lines and storytelling, using controversial stories to grab headlines, or neglecting the needs of its roster over the money they bring into the business, the WWE definitely has its fair share of dark secrets. What's your favorite WWE fact? Tell me in the comments below, and if you learned anything from today's video, drop me a like and let me know. Remember to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video on this channel. We'll see you in the next one.